I'm Alan Willard, senior technical designer here at Epic Games, and I've been here for just a little over 25 years now. I've worked on all of the Unreal Tournament games, Gears of War, and now Lego Fortnite is what I've been working on for the last year and a half or so. I'd have to say one of my favorite projects, and it's very personal, would have been Unreal Tournament, because as the first project that I'd worked on, getting to meet real game developers, being part of the team as it gelled together, having an incredible amount of input into the design as somebody who's never been part of a team like that before, it was just absolutely amazing. As we finished Lego Fortnite, getting to see what all the other teams have put in instead of kind of being focused on my own little bubble, it's been mind-blowing. The amount of creativity and humor and excitement and just inspiration in the world when you're running around, it reminds me of what it was like when I first got into games, into making them, not just playing them, and how limitless the possibilities seemed. I'm really looking forward to what comes from that.
I'm Chance Ivey, and I am Associate Design Director on Lego Fortnite. I've been here about 9.5 years, so started in the summer of 2014, right on the heels of the subscription launch of UE 4. Over the years, I've had the opportunity to work on projects of all types, such as Robo Recall, some of our modding efforts, The Matrix Awakens, and Lego Fortnite. Thinking back on it, I think probably my favorite project I worked on here was the early access launch of Unreal Engine 5 back in the spring of 2021. It just was really great to be there when it all started and kind of watch, all the teams kind of come together. We only get to do that once every 10 years. That was a really special moment for me. The development community has always been kind of surprising us with what they do with our tools and technology. I think the new tools and capabilities in UEFN are really interesting. I'm really excited to see what people do with them and kind of where we take the tools next to support, all kinds of just different kinds of experiences on top of that platform. I'm just so excited about it all.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Inside Unreal, a weekly show where we learn, explore, and celebrate everything Unreal. I am your host, Tina.
And I'm Shane Callie, and we're your friendly neighborhood community managers.
Thank you all for joining us for our annual Year in Review live stream. To help us celebrate the year, we'd like to welcome Marcus from Development.
Hi, everybody.
We'd also like to welcome Andrew from the Fortnite team. And also Shord from the Epic Developer Community team.
Hello, everyone.
We appreciate you joining in for this year-end tradition where we get to highlight incredible achievements of the year and offer a peek at what we've got up our sleeves for the next. Before we dive in, though, I would like for our guests to tell us just a little bit about themselves. So, Marcus, tell us about yourself.
Sure. Well, I've been at Epic for almost 10 years. Started in 2014, I think, just right before UE4 launch came out. I was an engineer on the platform team working on PlayStation 4. And then since then, I've just, been a part of a lot of things that we've done. So shipping Paragon, spent some time on the rendering team, platform team, back on the engine team. And more recently, working with Andrew on like UEFN and Verse and getting that out the door to the community.
That's awesome. Well, speaking of Andrew, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself as well?
Uh-oh, I think we lost Andrew audio.
No.
No?
Yes, I am.
Oh, there we go. There you are.
There we go. So yeah, I've been at Epic since about 2015. I joined on Paragon, worked with Marcus to ship that. That was one of our first games that we shipped on PlayStation 4 with UE4. Since then, I've worked on a couple of projects like Fortnite, UE Virtual Production, Fortnite Mobile, and yeah, like Marcus said, I've been working in the Fortnite ecosystem for the last couple of years. That's UEFN and Fortnite Creator, and recently Lego Fortnite.
Very cool. And then, last but certainly not least, Shord, would you also like to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. So I started with, at the age of 15, I started with Unreal Engine 1. So this was in 1999. And I'm originally a level designer and an environment artist. And I made a lot of levels and mods back then. In 2003, I first worked for Epic. I did levels for Tournament 2004. I did other stuff after that, so I left Epic at that point in time. I did lots of other stuff, but everything I did was always Unreal Engine. So I did a lot of tutorials. I ran a number of Unreal Engine community and level websites and things like that. I taught at Unreal Engine at schools, at game studios. I did my own Unreal Engine indie games, all that kind of stuff. 2014 came back, and I started traveling around, in particular within Europe, to represent Unreal Engine. Like I went to studios, schools, game dev conferences, things like that. Talk about Unreal, basically. Last couple of years, I've been looking after the online developer experience, so documentation, community activities, sample projects, websites, that kind of stuff. So,
awesome. Well, very excited to have you all here with us today. 2023 brought about a lot of exciting updates and changes, but it was also extra special to us for another reason. It was Unreal Engine's 25th anniversary. So, first, we wanted to do something a little different and take a look back at where it all started and the journey that brought us here today. Unreal Engine has gone through quite the evolution over time, all the way from its original debut in 1998 with the release of Unreal. Since then, Unreal has been utilized for not only Epic's projects like Unreal Tournament, Gears of War, and of course, Fortnite, but thousands of yours, many of which have been recognized with awards and accolades for their innovation and impeccable experiences. And because of you, the folks that have been here for the ride, we've been able to continue to iterate, refine, and improve the Unreal Engine over the past 25 years. So, if you don't mind, please take a brief trip down memory lane with us. To set the stage a little bit right, we're gonna get in the mindset of 1998, okay? Right. So we're talking Titanic won Best Picture.
Makes sense.
Windows 98 released.
Definitely. And Furby was the hottest toy on the market.
Exactly. Can't forget that.
Never.
So, Shord, will you bring us back to the beginning of Unreal?
yes, this will be fun. So we're going to walk through Unreal Engine 1 down up to 4, through all the old editors and kind of show what it kind of looked like, what kind of features it had, and you're going to see the whole progression from the beginning to where we are today, basically. So let's switch to the other screen. Right, okay, let's chat through this. So this is Unreal Engine 1, 1998, with Unreal Editor 1. There's an important note there, because in the beginning there were multiple Unreal editors. In a couple of minutes, I'm gonna switch over to Unreal Editor 2 for Unreal Engine 1. Let's start here. So this is Unreal itself, Unreal the game. And I think what's going to be the recurring theme as we're going to go through all these different editors is really what makes Unreal, at least in my perspective and my experience over those years, but what makes Unreal has been there all the way since the beginning, like, the DNA of what the engine is all the way through. And so, for example, right away, as we get into the experience over here, I'm going to fly around in it in a bit, but as you get into the experience here, it's what you see is what you get. Now, from today's perspective, that is obvious. Most tools and engines and things nowadays are all what you see is what you get, but you got to think 25 years ago, that was absolutely not obvious. This was not evident. So the fact that Unreal Engine right away from the very beginning it shows you everything in the viewport. It shows you what things will look like in game directly in the viewport. It shows you all the effects, all the lighting, everything is dynamic, everything is there. It really empowers you as a developer to basically know what you're doing and experiment, play around with it and all of that. I started with Unreal Engine 1 back then. After I used Unreal for a while, I started experimenting with other engines too, other tools and all that, but it never got to the magic that Unreal has. And that for me is really one of the key points of the engine, right? And that's what we see over here. So let's do some stuff. So you can already see over here, all the lighting is being previewed. Again, obvious right now, definitely not back then. In fact, at that point in time, colored lights that were blending correctly with each other was something that was brand new. That's why Unreal was so colorful, to kind of demonstrate that it could do that. But it had all of that, even the lava material, or not material, texture really, here, over here. This is not a flipbook animation that it would go through, as would be common at that point in time. This is literally an animation that was done within the editor on that texture. I mean, this is crazy at that point in time. We're talking 25 years ago, right? In general, what you're looking at here, I'm going to show some really cool features in a second. Let me set up a light first, just so you can get a bit of a sense of how this works. So, and the light icons, by the way, are also real fun, because the first Unreal Engine, it actually had these really pixelated torches with fire, basically, as a light actor, and then you could say by Unreal Engine 2, you got like, I don't know, incandescent light bulbs or something, and then by 3 or 4 or 5 or so, you get LED light bulbs, but they actually went through a progression as well. Anyway, as you see over here, it was, you had a property panel. There were no color pickers or anything else like that, so 255 was the max value. We're going to keep it 0, which is red, so no color picker there, and saturation will make 0 too. We'll put light effect on non-incidents because it makes it more concentrated, and let's make it really small. So now we have a small red light. But again, this is completely real time, and this is really cool to see. Again, you've got to look at it in this perspective of so many years ago that this is possible. And there were a lot of other really cool things in there. You already see there's a bit of a flickering light there. There's an even better example of that somewhere here around the corner. If we can find it back over here, around the corner over here. So you see, this is it's dynamic lighting. Nowadays, this would have been a light function, right? But again, this wasn't a light function back then, but it was effects that were baked in, that were built into the engine, and it's just mind blowing to see what was possible. Here's another really cool one. Let's go to this big open room over here. So we got a flat floor over here. Let's right click the flat floor and let's put it to mirror. And what we actually get is we get an absolutely crisp reflection. Like, it's a complete mirror. It's such an accurate and real-time mirror that it actually shows my camera actor right there. That's the camera. Okay. It is so accurate that I can actually select things in the reflection itself. Crazy enough. So again, now look at it from the perspective. This stuff ran on a 300 megahertz CPU with 32 megabytes of RAM, with maybe at best one of the earlier 3D cards in there, but it could also do in software rendering. In fact, the editor right now, I believe, is rendering in software mode. So it's really insane to consider what was possible back then. And again, it set the path. User-friendly, what you see is what you get, very visual, very, all of that. And that was really key. A couple of other interesting things. So we had textures here, for example. The textures were 128 in resolution, most of them. There were obviously no materials. It was just simple textures. There were also 256 colors only. Simple. Another thing here that's interesting to note is that we had actor classes. So underneath the engine, it was a C++ for the source code. And then actually had something called Unreal Script. So we had our own scripting/programming language that did most of the gameplay scripting. And then on top of that, you had actors. So I'm going to look at the actors in a second, but if you look at, for example, the Unreal Script part of it, we've got some recognizable classes here already, like pawn, right? And then, subclasses underneath that. But if you double-click pawn, you would actually get the Unreal Script. This was Unreal Script that remained there until the end of Unreal Engine 3. So for years, this is how everything was done. It's fun to see. And most of the level interactions, they were done with level scripting. So if I go back to that section where I was a second ago, over here, so the majority of scripting was done with actors. So you place, for example, a trigger actor over here, and in the trigger actor, you have an event and you have a tag. So in this case, we have event, I think it says FF1 inactive, and it's going to go to this one, which is tag FF1 inactive. So event lines up with tag, whichever actor has tag continues and would then execute whatever was set up in this case, translator events, and do that kind of stuff. A message would pop up and the message would say this text. And that was basically all of the scripting that we had and how the whole thing worked. So it was really, really cool to see. And one other last thing before we're gonna go to the second editor of Unreal Engine 1 is that the other thing that really, again, from day one established what Unreal Engine stands for is, and I can't demonstrate it here in the editor, but the files that came with the game, so with Unreal and Unreal Tournament, those files were the actual development files too. So the files that you worked in as a developer, that Epic also worked on as they made the game, were the exact same files everyone got and could open them in the editor. So you could open up every level, every file, every asset, everything that came with the game directly in the editor and learn from it. In fact, you could simply, for example, this level right here is one of the game's levels. Anyone could open this up and anyone could do save as, modify it, and start doing their own stuff with it. So it makes for a very open and transparent development culture, again, from day one. And all of that attracted me, and still makes me passionate all these years later. So, yeah.
And we love to see that.
Yeah. So to continue there, before we take I think we're going to run a video when we do the transition to Unreal Engine 2. But before we go to Unreal Engine 2, we're going to go to the second editor of Unreal Engine 1. So this was the first one, and this is the second one. And this is an important point here, because while engine-wise, it's the same. Okay, so the rendering capabilities and all that, they were pretty much the same. There was not much difference there. But this was the editor used for Unreal Tournament. And it's really about the user interface and the increased, the power that you have in the editor, basically, that really set it aside. And that's going to set it. When you see Unreal Engine 2, you're going to see this is basically the predecessor to that. And this is why that's an important junction point. So this is an Unreal Tournament level. I want to talk a little bit about how things are modeled here, because that's also an interesting point we didn't touch on in Unreal 1, the game itself. So here's basically you have space, there's a space station hanging here, and this is a multiplayer level. So everything you see in all of Unreal Engine 1 is basically modeled within the viewport itself, within the editor itself. And it's, modeling is the wrong word even for it. It's done with BSP brushes, so binary space partitioning, everything. So if you look in the wireframe mode, this is it. There are no meshes. No meshes were made in, other programs and imported. It was purely done in here, and everything is a primitive. For example, this hallway over here is a cube, and you could move it, but it wouldn't update right away. It would only update once you build geometry. So it was quite complicated in a sense to work with. I'm going to delete these two bits of trim, and then we're going to press rebuild geometry. And once that's done, it has moved. So basically that was the workflow, right? Now, luckily on this kind of computer, on a modern computer, this takes seconds. This used to take 15 minutes. So it definitely wasn't fast back then. Lighting too. So now you can see I lost all the lighting, because the moment I rebuild geometry, I lose the lighting. I got to rebake all the light maps. Again, this takes seconds. Used to take much, much longer. And we have made a change. And, Unreal did a lot of things in there that were really innovative and also quite different from other engines at that point in time. So, for example, one of those things is that there was a builder brush, which is this orange frame right here, or it's a plane really, but we can make it a cube. So let's make it a cube by pressing that. And because it's a little bit rotated, I'm going to reset the rotation so we can work a little bit better here. Here we are. So you would add something that speaks for itself, but you could also subtract from it. So if I move a little bit on the side, subtract, so now I've subtracted away from that cube, obviously. There's no lighting on that, so again, you always had to press that button with rebuild with lighting on it. So everything was done like that, with cubes and basic shapes, adding and subtracting from each other. That was it. And in fact, one of the coolest things of Unreal is that, unlike, for example, Quake and Half-Life and other engines from that point in time, the world, the void, so the black space that that the level is built in, it was subtractive. It wasn't additive. In Unreal Engine 3 and 4, and in pretty much every other tool and thing out there, it's always additive, right? So you start with an empty space and you add objects into the empty space that just floats in that emptiness. But in Unreal Engine 1 and 2, you started with a void that was filled up. This black space is not empty, it's filled up. It's a solid. And you subtract from that solid. which means that over here, this yellow box over here, is a giant subtracted box that was carved away from the giant block, the solid void. So you would carve out spaces, and that's where you would work in. So space here is a box that you're inside of. And in fact, the fact that it looks like space in itself is also kind of cool, because it actually is really just a box that gets a projection on it from another box next to it, which is this one, where we build a miniature version of space, because you see it's a really tiny little space, and the zone info here is the perspective of the camera. So this is what you see around the level. It's tiny, and it's next to it. You see? So it's just really cool to see all of that stuff. So that was Unreal Engine 1.
Wild.
Yep.
Incredible. Yeah, and I mean, you can see where a lot of the bones that the rest of the engine was built off of came from in there.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's some of it that's still in there today.
Yeah.
I think there's still some Timco floating around.
Yeah. Thank goodness, I love that.
Speaking of Unreal, oh, sorry, Shard.
I was going to say the brushes, right? They were in there all the way up to, I think, Unreal Engine 5 in the beginning or such. And then, you know, the fact there's actors, there's a pawn actor, there's a player start. All of that was already here. I mean, this thing right here is a player start, right? So since the beginning.
Right.
So.
Oh. Well, speaking of Unreal and Unreal Tournament, we have a special message from Epic's OG community manager, the wonderful Stacy, aka Flack. Let's roll the tape.
Hey everyone, Flack here. We want to give a very special shout out to the Unreal Tournament community and send our gratitude to folks over at oldunreal.com for continuing to support older versions of Unreal and Unreal Tournament. It's been wonderful to work with these folks over the years, and we appreciate their hard work and dedication to the Unreal series. There are too many to thank individually, but the list includes the following superstars. Please forgive me as I wreck some of their names. Smurfs, Anthrax, Marco, aka Dots, Han, Hygor, aka Keiko FFF, Buggy, Neon Knight OA, Die Hard, and Diod. We'd also like to thank Krulor at UnrealRedox.com for doing some amazing work with Unreal and Unreal Editor. Everyone, have a great end of year and keep being Unreal.
Oh, Stacy is wonderful, and it is always good to hear from her. So
Stacy is the best.
Stacy is the best. You heard it here. All right, Shord, do you mind taking us back through the editor? I believe now we have moved on to the next full version of the engine, right?
Absolutely. So now we're going to get to Unreal Engine 2 and technically Unreal Editor 3. This is very complicated. After this version, we stopped doing that. So, but over here, so what we're seeing over here, this is actually a level I worked on all the way back then. This is one of my original levels, although it had a lot more fog in there, and I just reduced the fog for this demo because back then, for performance reasons, the fog was basically occluding things. Anyway, you can right away see that the major, first of all, editor interface is obviously very, very similar to what you just saw with the second editor for Unreal Engine 1. This is a completely, the engine is definitely Unreal Engine 2, but the editor experience is very, very similar. But if you look at the viewport, the very obvious immediate difference is, well, it's outdoors, there's a landscape, there are models there, you see a very clear progression forward. And that was one of the big things of Unreal Engine 2. So larger environments, a terrain system, static meshes, things like that. So if you look over here, and let me turn off all the volumes because it gets a bit hard to see. But there is a terrain system in here. This is the actual terrain editing panel. You had layers in there, you had decorations, which was foliage. You couldn't do much foliage in terms of performance, like it wouldn't render necessarily, but the capabilities were there and it would do the obvious, right? So you can paint things, sculpt the landscape and things like that. So we had that, static meshes. And I hide the terrain. These are still brushes. So you still have primitives like we used in Unreal Engine 1. So you use them kind of like a foundation, and then you would place meshes on top of it, and landscape or terrain is obviously, in parallel to that. But that was the main idea here. We had other couple of things there too. So we started getting more and more browsers and windows. So now you had this overall combined window, you had a texture window, actor classes, meshes, animations, static meshes. So stuff started appearing that would eventually, by Unreal Engine 3, become the content browser. So for example, if you look in, let's see this one here for a second. So we had textures. The textures were now 2048. Some of them, most of them were 1024, but some of them started being 2048. They were compressed. They had a lot of the options that you already see today too, right? So there's LOD groups for the textures over here and things like that. So yeah, had all of that kind of stuff in there. But also we had our first materials called shaders at that point in time. So this red thing over here is a shader. So if you look at that one, and it's definitely not like the material editor we see today, that would come by Unreal Engine 3, but it's a simple, straightforward system. You have a number of slots and you can slot in textures for what you have. There are no normal maps that didn't exist yet back then. So it's pretty much just diffuse, opacity, specular, and emissive. Self-illumination is emissive. And a couple of options that you might recognize today too, like two-sided or, making it translucent and things like that. But there was a first system for that. And the static meshes as mentioned. So over here, for example, we have, here's this concrete pillar block thing. It had collision. You would have to define the simplified collision. And these are things we recognize today as well. So all of that was introduced at that point in time. And also the other thing that was introduced were skeletal meshes and skeletal animations, because in Unreal Engine 1, it was vertex animation. But by Unreal Engine 2, we started having, unfortunately, there's no texture on this character, but let's just look at it as it is. We started having actual animated, skeletal animated meshes in there. So that was another big innovation that we saw there. It was still actor-based, in terms of the scripting. So you place actors in the viewports and you connect them with events and tags. It was still Unreal Script and C++ underneath that. So all of that was the same. And, oh, by the way, almost forgot. One other thing here is that we had the first particle system in there too. It wasn't an editor yet. It was just an actor. So we have an emitter here. Let's add the emitter to the ground. Let's edit it. And everything was done through the properties. Through really the same thing here. So you had a landscape here, right? But you still have to subtract a giant box out of the void of everything, out of the solidness. So you then have this large empty box, and then you can place a landscape in that empty box, and then you can continue working. And the sky was that little miniature sky over there that gets projected around it. So it was still the same thing. That was cool. But yeah, and it was the first version where we had proper console support. So that's also noteworthy. And that would be the transition to Unreal Engine 3, which doubled down on that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's awesome. I love being able to see already how things were progressing through there, though. I don't know, there's something near and dear to my heart now about the idea of literally having to carve out space for your level in the void, in the full void.
But there were very heated discussions around that at that point in time, with like the Quake community and the Half-Life community and all that, because the way that Quake and Half-Life, the other big engines at that point in time, that they worked, it was additive, right? You start with an empty space and then you have to build your environments in there. But therefore you have to make a floor brush. So 1 cube is the floor, 1 cube is the ceiling, and then 4 cubes for the walls. So now you need 6 brushes to make a room. In Unreal, it would have been 1. You just subtract a cube. And so we all felt like this is so much more, faster and better and more user-friendly. And then the other communities would always say, that's weird. We don't understand that. We don't want to do that. So it was a very heated debate at that point in time.
Well, they are exactly opposing views, so I can understand the drama.
Yeah.
But yeah, that does bring us over to UE3, which of course was used as the foundation for Gears of War and Unreal Tournament 3. But to give you an example of Unreal Engine 3's capabilities, we're going to show you a little bit of the Samaritan demo.
This is one of my favorite ones. I think this thing still holds up. It still looks amazing. I remember seeing it the first time. Couldn't believe this was happening on current hardware.
Yeah, Tina, when you first showed it to me, I thought it was a recent release. I didn't realize it was over 10 years old.
Yeah, it really does hold up even to this day. You could show that to me now and say that we built it in UE5, and I'd believe you.
Sure.
But yeah, all right, Short. With that in mind, do you want to take us through Unreal Engine 3?
Yes. So now we are getting to, what would it be? 2006, I think, if I remember correctly, somewhere there, 5, 6, 7. What you're seeing here is not the first version of Unreal Engine 3. I'm going to explain it in a second. So this is the more advanced one. You have better lighting here and things like that. But before we get there, I think the really big part of what made Unreal Engine 3, again, the user interface is kind of similar, right? It has definitely been refreshed, but you still see that's the same idea. There's this toolbar on the left, there's the same kind of buttons are there. That would continue, but the rendering capabilities have clearly taken a very big step forward. And it starts to be more and more what we would see, recognized as a more modern kind of game or, virtual environment as we know it today. And that's what you see here as well. So this is actually the deck level from Unreal Tournament 3, looking at over here. So a lot more detail, as you can see, a lot more models. There's actually normal maps on things. The textures are still lower resolution than what you might see today, obviously, but all of that stuff is now here. And a lot of the tools that we see today in Unreal Engine 5, they basically came from this period of time. And I think that was probably, for me personally, the biggest evolution of Unreal Engine 3, the tooling. The further doubling down on what you see is what you get, the further doubling down on, let's give people really cool tools in the editor itself that work very visual, that work very easy to use, often node-based, graph-based, right? All of that started over here. I think the very biggest one of all is Kismet. So we have this green K button at the top toolbar here. That is Kismet. And so, unfortunately, I can't pan around here because there seems to be something weird with modern computers and this stuff. But nonetheless, this is visual scripting. So the actor-based scripting was replaced with Kismet. So you now had the level script, Kismet. And in that level script, you would set up events and other things. So you would have events like this. You could say, on pawn, I don't know, get inventory or whatever, or player spawned was a very common one. So basically when the game began, because the player spawned or a level loader or something like that, you could have variables, you could have conditions, and you would have actions, so basically functions, and a long list of functions at that, of all these kind of things to do. And that was really, really, strong. And again, nowadays we have a lot of visual scripting tools, in general, within, the industry and all that. But back then, this was very, very new. And for me as a non-programmer, right, I'm an artist and a designer, suddenly being able to have this was eye-opening. I build entire games in this stuff. And a lot of people started doing that. And that eventually became Blueprint. Because one limitation of this system was that it was tied to the level. So you didn't have a standalone Kismet, or you didn't have standalone classes. You only had the Kismet that was placed in that level. So if you wanted to make a game out of this, and it wasn't intended for that originally, so that was why it wasn't supported, but you would have to copy paste all the Kismet you did in one level script basically to the next level you have, and then to the next and to the next. And if you fix something, you would keep copy pasting it back and forth between all of them. Obviously great fun. But nonetheless, it worked. I literally shipped games like this. There were games that are still live on Steam right now. They're doing this. So it worked and it was really empowering. The other really cool thing that was introduced here, by the way, before we even get to that, because I need to use the content browser to get there, but we now have a content browser. Looked very, very different, in terms of styling and all that. But we had a content browser, and within that, you can see, we now see all asset types in one view. You got textures, right? You got static meshes, and again, static meshes, they become more complex. There's more options here. Many options that you recognize from today. They are light map, all that kind of stuff is now there. But we also had materials. So the same here, I can't pan the window around. It will weirdly jump, unfortunately, due to a bug related to apparently using this with modern computers. But the material editor here is pretty much what you use today in Unreal Engine 5. It looks visually different. We have more options nowadays. We have functions in there and lots of other stuff that you didn't have back then. But if you ignore the user interface and functions, and if you ignore the fact that this goes left and the current one goes right, we change the direction sometime during Unreal Engine 4. If you look at the expressions here, it's the same stuff. If you could use the material editor today, you could go back to Unreal Engine 3 and you'd be just fine in doing something over there. It's the exact same functions, it's the exact same workflow. And again, it was really empowering to see like all the awesome, really cool stuff you can do with that. Like these giant networks and all that, we got going on this. And again, this is, what is it, 15 years ago, more? 2006, 7, it's more even. So it's a really long while ago that the material editor has been there. And at the same time, a lot of these other editors came in as well. So again, for me, Unreal Engine 3 was really about the tooling. So a particle editor came in. Looking for a particle over here somewhere. So you can see this thing here, that's a particle. But now we have an actual editor. And that editor is Cascade that made it well into Unreal Engine 4 before it was eventually replaced by Niagara. But we have Cascade in here. It works exactly as it worked in Unreal Engine 4, for those of you who've used it over there. So exactly the same thing. Right, so you would add modules to it basically and would use that functionality. So that was really cool too. We had other stuff in here as well. Even what you saw here in Kismet, we have a matinee here, which is basically today's timeline. You double click that, you get a timeline editor. This is, it's like the timeline basically. So all of that stuff was in there. There are physics in here now. Can't demonstrate it, but the engine now had physics. The engine now had post-processing. This frame over here is post-processing. Didn't have as many options yet as we have today, but it had this kind of stuff in here. So we had that. The world was now additive. So there's no longer one giant box. There's also no longer a skybox. The sky is actually a giant mesh placed around it as it is today. So all of that stuff was now as we know it. And rendering wise, obviously, besides normal maps and all that, you can see there is dynamic shadows here. There is a directional light from the sun. All of that kind of stuff has been brought in as well. So yeah, it was a big step up in that sense. This was also the first engine that, with Gears of War and all that, was very console focused, clearly focused on that. It was also the time when smartphones were coming up. So it was the first engine to run on mobile. And I believe, if I recall correctly, it was VR, with the first VR version of Unreal on this as well. And lastly, another big one that's not technical, but what I mentioned in the beginning when we started talking about Unreal Engine 3, this is the Unreal Development Kit. So that's a special build of Unreal Engine 3 that was publicly available. Up until this point, and we're talking about fall 2010 here, when this got released, up until 2010, when you wanted to use Unreal Engine, you either had to be a game studio and license it from Epic, but that was, complicated. It wasn't something anyone could do. Or you would have to get Unreal Tournament, Unreal Tournament 2004, one of those kind of games, and mod those games. And you would have the editor. That's what we just did with the other ones. But UDK was the first time the engine was available as a standalone, just the engine, and available for other people to make a game with. I think there was actually a version in 2002 or so, if I recall right. In my head, there was a version called Unreal RT, Unreal Runtime. Then I tried Googling it, couldn't find anything anymore. So now I don't know if it's my brain or if it's the internet. But I think there was a version that was generally available, but it was very small in scope. So again, UDK was a big step up to making the engine generally available, which would then culminate in Unreal Engine 4 and then 5. So that's important to know as well. So yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love seeing some of the new tools coming in there, like physics, like you mentioned, and post-processing. This was also, I think you mentioned, the first version of the engine that was no longer you subtracting space for your levels, right?
Yeah, actually, but on that, real quick, back to the screen. If I hide the meshes, these are still the primitives. We are still at primitive level here, with brushes, with meshes on top. So that was still the case, but no longer subtracted now.
That's awesome. So there's still a little bit there. Still a little bit coming through each one there.
Yep.
That's awesome. But yeah, that then brings us over into, of course, Unreal Engine 4, which was it was such a significant milestone for a few reasons. But we saw so many folks using Unreal Engine to create impressive projects, and we wanted even more people to help shape the future of games. So, as they say, if you love something, set it free. And that's what we did. I want to kind of open the conversation up a little bit here too, because I know Marcus and Andrew, both of you played pretty big roles in UE4 as well. So around this time, especially with Boy and His Kite, do you have any memories of what was going on around then?
I mean, specifically for Boy and His Kite, what I remember was working on Paragon, because we were doing that while they were getting ready to go off the subscription model to release everything for free, which was pretty awesome. But it was a very interesting time to be around with. I think Boy and His Kite was the first time we built the big, world streaming system for the large, super large world. But Paragon didn't need that, so we were kind of over there doing our Paragon things.
I think Boy and His Kite was, I think, the thing that convinced me to come to Epic. I wasn't working at Epic at the time. I had some friends who'd moved here, and I saw it at GDC, and then Kim, our CTO, invited me over like that summer to kind of come and hang out and talk to the team. And I think what really blew me away with the Boy and the Kite was it wasn't just the visuals were amazing, but like it was actually an amazing piece of content. Like, it was a fun little story and just so well executed. And it's really hard to find a company that can execute technically and creatively like that. And it just made me realize that Epic was somewhere very special and somewhere that I wanted to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And what about you, Shord? What were you doing around this time?
I actually remember this really well, and it's one of my favorite moments because it's the music too, right? The beauty of that demo with the music and the whole experience of that thing. And I remember it was a GDC. That was a GDC where we released that thing, but we also changed the pricing. Unreal Engine 4 was subscription for about a year, and at that GDC where we did Boy and a Kite, we set it free, hence the title. But just standing there at GDC, you stand there at the booth and you hear the music on loop, right? Because it's running the whole day. So you're just standing there all day long in that music. But it was so good. It was like, it felt right, like we were doing the right thing, like the engine, everything just felt right. That was the memory I have in my head. That's still my favorite GDC, actually, for that reason.
That's awesome. Yeah, I can imagine. It was a big, arguably historic moment, especially for Epic itself. So.
Oh yeah, totally. Just the decision to take the engine to the free model was huge.
Yeah.
So many young developers realized, oh my goodness, I can now check this out.
I can do
Super
this.
awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Jord, do you want to walk us through Unreal Engine 4?
Yes, and we're going to do a very special version of Unreal Engine 4, because what you're looking at here is not a normal one, to make this interesting. So what you're looking at here is Rocket. And Rocket was the code name for Unreal Engine 4 Alpha prior to release. So for about a year before public release in March 2014, so this is basically 2013 what you're looking at, it was called Rocket. And this is the third build, if I have it right, of Rocket that we dug up. And so you see a very early version of Unreal Engine 4 that may be new to many of you. You can see the user interface is definitely not what Unreal Engine 4 would eventually have. There's a lot of features missing here. Just to kind of give you an example of how much is missing. If I right click in the content browser, so you can see what kind of types you can make, this was all we had, right? So this is very early on. This is basically what we started off with. And what, a little bit better version than this was what was originally released for Unreal Engine 4.0. What you also see immediately is the user interface is completely new. A lot of things in Unreal Engine 4 were very, very different and very new compared to 1, 2, and 3. User interface is one of them. Obviously, Blueprints is there now, made a huge difference. I think for me personally, that was probably the very, very biggest difference there. But as a programmer, someone might say, Unreal script being removed and it all being C++ based, which was the other big change, was similar in weights. So it was, I think, if I were to summarize Unreal Engine 4 from the perspective of all the versions, it's definitely down to, creating functionality and gameplay and, be it C++, be it Blueprint, but that was the biggest impact I felt was there. And so if you look at Blueprints, which is then introduced, we have an early version here of Blueprints. Looks kind of similar in a way, I guess. It's still Blueprint, the nodes look the same, the logic is the same, there's just fewer options and things built in. But yeah, so here's Blueprint. And again, it was a continuation of Kismet. That's why I think in code it's still called Kismet 2, or it used to be, or something like that. It's where it came from. But now Blueprint was based, there were separate classes. You can make a Blueprint class in the content browser that exists in and by itself, and that can call on other Blueprint classes. And again, huge step up from Kismet. That in particular, many other innovations here as well. In fact, there are components built in. You can also see, by the way, just how basic that character was. The first, the default character at that point in time. But yeah, that was a really, really big step. And we also saw visual scripting coming back in more and more parts of the engine. Not necessarily in this version, some of it came in later, but obviously Niagara, visual scripting based, right? Like you see this in Unreal Engine 5 too, with meta sounds and all that. You see it with AI, you see it in animation blueprints, which were already in this version. So through the whole editor experience, it became more and more graph based, and you really saw an evolution there. Another change that was difficult to show here, but that happened, is that the engine became separated from the project. Again, speaks for itself in today's standard, not obvious before. So Unreal Engine 1, 2, and 3, they were always tied to the game. So if you had a game, the engine was your game. So if you would be working on 2 different games, you would have to duplicate the whole engine, like everything, and then that's your second game. But with Unreal Engine 4, we now had engine and you had projects, and you could have many different projects and can load that up. So there was a big step there too. And then obviously, I think this is getting into familiar territory here, so I think many viewers are probably aware of what Unreal Engine 4 did, but over the lifetime of Unreal Engine 4, you would get into lots of cool stuff, real-time ray tracing, and you have volumetric lighting, and you have sky, atmosphere, water, and a million innovations and improvements. Like it really escalated in velocity, the stuff that was coming in. But it all started kind of with Rocket that you see over here and these early builds. So yeah.
And I know that also, like you were saying, Marcus, the era of Unreal Engine 4 was huge, especially for like demo projects and just projects in general that Epic had been working on. So I'm curious, what was it like seeing the development of things like Paragon and even the early stages of Fortnite?
Yeah, it was really interesting and a lot of fun. I mean, Short just showed us like the early 4.0 build, and it was an early build, right? There was still a lot of work to do. It was really great to give to the community and see what they could do. But at that point, like, we'd never shipped a game on console on UE4, for example. So Paragon was a nice proof point to really battle test the new technology, and really a lot of fun there. And then over the years, like, we did a number of other kind of GDC demos similar to the Samaritan and other previous demos. So after Buenos, I think we did a Human Race and a Star Wars Reflections one, and each one just like a way to push the engine just a little bit further, kind of culminating later in like The Matrix Awakens and other things. And then seeing Fortnite grow up and stuff too. But I think Andrew was probably a little bit closer to Fortnite and the Fortnite mobile things on that side.
Yeah, I just have such fun memories of UE4. Like, obviously the engine is just growing so much over the years, and I feel like UE4 was the spot I had most of the engine mapped in my mind. Like, I could probably walk through everything, execute in a frame, and kind of know what went on. But that was some time ago, and it's a far more complex engine, as I think Short will show us soon.
I think I still remember most of the PS4 file system code. I don't think Luke has rewritten it entirely yet, but maybe most of it by now.
Yeah. I know there was also, you mentioned something about, I think, Elemental as well, right? You worked on that one?
Well, I didn't work on Elemental, but as working on PlayStation 4, it was one of the first demos that we brought up on PlayStation 4 just to make sure everything would work properly, and got to show it off in booths and stuff, and that was a really, really interesting time as well.
Yeah.
I always enjoy bringing up a new platform, so.
Definitely. Yeah, it was, there were tons of great demos around that time. That was also, like you were saying, Shane, UE4 is when a lot of new developers got into it. I know for myself, even, UE4 was when I really started to get into development as well, and start to actually learn about all these different aspects of it. And it was big.
Exciting
it was a big
times.
release. Yeah.
What an evolution.
Yes. But of course, all of this ultimately brings us to UE5. And the big stuff that came with that.
Oh,
this reveal trailer. So I have a question about this. I'm pretty sure that I heard somewhere that even just one of those statues was at least 1 million polygons.
I believe that's accurate. I don't remember the exact poly count, but this was really one of the first, real proof points for the nanite technology, which was intended to kind of free developers from having to worry about poly counts and things, at least the on-screen version. It came out amazingly well, and it performed better than a lot of our expectations. Like, super happy with the way it came out. But yeah, the poly counts in this demo were surprisingly very high. I think you can go back and look at some old videos of Brian Karras and some other team members from the Nanite team really going through the tech. It's super interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Testament to what the tools can do, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I still fondly, remember the days of having to make, 5 to 7 LODs of different assets, and then being able to see a demo with multi-million polygons just available on screen all at once is amazing. Slightly infuriating, but in a good way. We're in the future now. But of course, all of this brings us to where we are today, and even today's show graphics are actually driven by Unreal Engine as well. So what you see on screen right now is what we're running the graphics with.
Well, would you look at that? Gorgeous.
Yeah, it's wonderful. This is called Motion Graphics Mode, and it's our dedicated tool set for motion and broadcast graphics. It combines the robust 3D and animation features of the engine with 2D layer design tools for a new hybrid workflow that should look familiar to existing designers. It makes it easy to create on-air compatible graphics, as well as high-end 3D product design and advertising visuals. In the future, this will be a very powerful tool for things like broadcasting and esports and all kinds of stuff. And who knows, maybe even for our own live streams.
Who knows?
We'll see. Who knows what the future holds. But it's an exciting time for sure. So for all of you, I have a couple questions now that we've gone through all the editors walking down memory lane, getting some real strong nostalgia vibes. But what were some of your personal highlights through all of this? Any favorite features, turning points that stuck out to you, game changers, projects, things like that? Marcus, want to start with you?
Sure. I mean, for me, I guess I'll mention again, Paragon has a special place in my heart, but that was really one of my favorite moments, just like the run up to make sure that we could, ship that title at 60 hertz on PlayStation 4, and it was really a place where we kind of set the stage for modern Epic, where we learned how to run a live game, prove the technology out on UV4, and at that time we did a lot of work on like the parallel rendering code and a lot of the streaming code and some I think old and have now been rewritten ways to do like GPU defragging and things like that was a really good time for me personally.
Yeah, absolutely. What about you, Andrew? Anything that's sticking out to you in particular from that time?
Well, I'm also Team Paragon, but I think Mark has covered that well. I really enjoyed working on the mobile ports of Fortnite. I think much like Paragon, we set very ambitious goals. So Paragon, we wanted to be like 60 hertz, and that was like our single-minded focus. And for mobile, we wanted to ship the same version of Fortnite that was on PC and console. Like, there's a lot of companies out there who would do a mobile game and create like a stripped-down version, or have them like as two separate games. But we from day one, we wanted to ship the version of Fortnite that everybody expected, and it was a lot of work, but a lot of fun digging into that and coming out with new approaches to hierarchical level of detail, rendering a world the size of Fortnite, getting content parity across platforms while supporting things like touch interfaces for those platforms. So yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, awesome. And then what about you, Shord? Through all of that, do you have any particular turning points or things like that?
It's a really impossible to answer question, right? But I think so. The boy in the kite thing, as mentioned at GDC, there, that for me was an important moment. I think Blueprint overall, the ability to, suddenly I could do anything. Suddenly I can make a game. I could never do that on my own without programming, right? That for me was a really big point. But going back further in time, I think the thing that probably had the biggest impact on me was the very beginning. Like, the community back then was obviously way smaller, but it was really pioneering stuff. And so it was a very small group of people, of like-minded people, trying this really weird new thing, and no one would understand what you're doing, like outside of that group. But it was a very particular atmosphere that created. And we had a lot of really cool community channels like Planet Unreal and then Beyond Unreal. And we had Nolly City for like level reviews and uploading levels and all that. And just that whole vibe there, and all those kind of websites and that whole community of making levels and looking at each other's stuff. But I think that probably was it.
Yeah.
And also, not to understate, like, being at Epic when the team shipped originally Fortnite, which did quite well, but then Battle Royale, which really took off, was a pretty wild ride. Like, to be around those first couple of weeks when people really got in there and started enjoying it, it was pretty fantastic.
Yeah. I believe there was a story that Amanda Shade, one of our community manager lead even, she was telling us about. There was a point when I think it was Battle Royale first went around that a radio show had picked it up and was talking about it, and everyone was really excited that it was getting that kind of publicity, and then it just went from there. So lots of exciting times. But overall, how does it feel to see the transformation of Epic's developer tools?
I think it's really interesting. Like, Short just took us down memory lane, and I think if you pay attention, you can see a really clear through line from UE1 all the way to today of just a clear progression of improvement and ease of use, and like giving power to to game developers on all fronts. And I don't know. I'm always just kind of blown away with what people can do with the engine. Like, every single extra tool you give someone gets combined with everything else in ways that you could never predict. Like, it's really incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. And same for you, Andrew. Any thoughts on just how things have developed over time?
I think it's been great seeing Epic, Epic move from a company that would build a game and license the tech to others to actually supporting like a very diverse set of games. Even before rocket racing in Fortnite, like, we were doing open world tech, and there was developers out there who were building racing games, building large open world games, building mobile games, and we've really built like a very, very competent and a highly skilled team, both of engineers and support, staff to support creators and licensees like big and small. And it's really been great to see that change.
Yeah, absolutely. And then Short, I mean, even as you just walked us through all the editors, what was it like watching that transformation over time?
I think like Marcus touched on as well, like, and as I said, as I was going through, right, like Unreal for me has always been, it's been on a line, it's been on a trajectory, and it's always been true to that trajectory since day one. Easy to use, all of that, and you see that improving and improving generation by generation, but it always stays true to what it was doing. The reason why I stuck to Unreal for all of these years, why I really got into Unreal all of those years ago, is still the very same thing that defines Unreal Engine today, and I think that's remarkable. For all of those years, it's awesome to see, and it keeps improving further and further. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree. Can only continue to go up from here, right?
It's true.
Those all, of course, laid the groundwork for some of the most powerful features we've released and improved upon this year, including things like PCG, Substrate, as well as expanding on Lumen, Nanite, and more. Plus, Unreal Engine tools paved a path for Unreal Editor for Fortnite, right, Shay?
Yes, which has definitely been an adventure all on its own. It's incredibly inspiring to watch as both creators and developers have come together to create amazing experiences within Fortnite and truly build a community full of not only talented Fortnite creators, but remarkable player communities of their own. One would say community deception. In addition to these experiences being built by our awesome creators, shout out to the Epic team as they have been hard at work building tool sets that enable creators to push the limits as we blur these worlds together. We're so excited to see what the future holds. And speaking of inspiring developments, we're stoked to share all the thrilling updates Unreal Engine has had this glorious year. So Tina, would you love to share?
I shall love to share. I do want to explore a few of the updates that the engine has gone through this year. And we went through both 5.2 and 5.3, both of which brought around some particularly interesting features. For starters, we debuted two big features as part of the Electric Dreams demo at GDC. First, Procedural Content Generation Framework, or lovingly referred to as PCG to save you a few syllables, is a toolset for creating your own procedural content and tools inside Unreal Engine. And secondly, Substrate. It's a new approach to authoring materials. It replaces the fixed suite of shading models and blend modes with a more expressive and modular framework. But Marcus, would you mind walking us through these features in better detail?
Sure. I mean, if you watch the Electric Dreams demo, you can see that the PCG is really a tool to help pay down some of the promise of UE5. Like with world partition and large world coordinates, we're really starting to be able to build larger and larger, more expansive worlds more easily. But if you have a very large world, then it becomes much more labor intensive and expensive to fill that world out with interesting detail and high quality detail. So PCG is really there to provide a solution to that particular problem, and it does it in a really interesting way. Like you can build a lot of your own custom rules and things, and you can see, like, even in that demo, when you use it, you can set it up to dynamically change roads and things as you move bits around, and it really saves a lot of time and effort. So really excited to see where that tool set goes. And for Substrate, when we went to UE4, we kind of got a brand new physically based material model out of the box with UE4, and the default material model is good for a lot of different kinds of materials, and we had some fixed function ones for specialized materials like clear coat and hair and a few other things that don't react like normal materials. With Substrate, we're kind of moving, getting to the point where we can move beyond those fixed function capabilities and just let the material artist, let the creator kind of build their own material model in the thing to more clearly express complex materials like car paint with the little glints and flecks properly working inside, colored refraction inside of clear coat, and just really getting that last little mile or last few feet out of the mile of expressibility for material models. So really excited about that one as well. Yeah. But I'd say those are kind of visual 5.2 and 5.3 features. The other thing with 5.2 and 5.3, I think the story there is just maturation of the tool set, right? These are builds where we have continually shipped our game with 5.2 and 5.3 features, and so you've seen a lot of just battle testing and optimization on top of Nanite, Lumen, TSR, other improvements that you just kind of get for free with those engine versions.
Yeah, absolutely. What were you hoping for, I guess, when these experimental features came out with the 5.2 update? Like, what are you most excited about when it comes to these features and others like it?
Yeah, I think for me, it's just a continuation of ease of use, right? Making games is a complex endeavor, and it's certainly, people have higher and higher expectations over time. So one of our many mantras over the course of building UE5 was to try to make things just work. So we've done that to a greater or less extent, but as you mentioned, like Nanite not needing to build LODs, TSR taking care of super resolution for you, Lumen taking care of dynamic lighting for you, like PCG substrate. Like these are things that can help you build your worlds, and you can see, we got what we hoped for, like ease of use. And efficiency in game creation.
Yeah, definitely. And then my last question for you for now, I'm coming back later, but from a development point of view, what are our goals when developing tool sets like these?
Goals when developing tool sets like these are, we have a lot of really, really good experts in their field. So like any tool that we're working on, you'll find teams that are both highly motivated to push the boundaries of what's possible in their field, whether that's physics, whether it's animation, whether it's visual rendering, and to take the technical skill and know-how and ability of that group of really talented people, and then box that up into a usable, friendly format that anyone can use to get high-quality content out the door as quickly and easily as possible. So I think what we always hope for is pushing boundaries, but then making those boundaries accessible to the community.
Yeah. All right. Well, it's been exciting to see those tools and how they're developed and everything like that. But I think something that goes hand in hand with that is also seeing how indies pick up these new tools and run with them, right? I mean, if there's one thing that we can all agree on, it's that making games is challenging, but there's a lot to learn. Then when new tools come out, that's even more to pick up. So to see so many indie developers adapting their workflows pretty immediately, even as soon as these features are released, is really inspiring.
Definitely, and we're seeing that on the creator side as well. Developers who have been in the gaming space for years know the feeling of innovating within a tool that has still so much room to grow. It's constantly evolving, and we're always interested in hearing more about what you're trying to create so we can support you in making the magic happen.
Yes, and Marcus, what's it like seeing these tools so readily utilized by the indies?
I think it's fantastic. I mean, that's a large part of the reason why I enjoy working here, is that anything that we do, with the pipeline right to GitHub and, with our engine releases, gets out in the world very, very quickly. And for me, it's always extremely satisfying to see what we do go out into the world and become real from the creations of other people. So for me, there's really nothing better than seeing the community build on top of what we release.
Yeah, and I feel like they always smash our expectations too.
You can rarely predict what people will do when you give them a new tool, and it's always very interesting to see what happens.
Yes, absolutely. We also had the honor and privilege of being able to either highlight some of these games or to have them join us at our GDC booth this past year as well. We had titles such as Norse, Two Falls, Kingdoms Reborn, Luna Abyss, Body Biteland Overclocked, and more. Norse in particular is using just about every single new part of the ecosystem tools released. And Body Biteland was a previous Epic Mega Jam entry that was released as a full game this year.
Yes, congrats to the Body Biteland team. That's exactly why we host the Mega Jams. Purple Ray Studio came together with an idea for a goofy game jam, and that turned into a full-blown game experience, and we love to see it. We also saw some really standout examples of the engine being used in very unique ways. Stray Gods, the role-playing musical, which was Golden Joysticks and Grammy nominated, had jaw-dropping 2D visuals and unforgettable audio.
Yeah, it's an extremely unique use case of the engine. I had the chance to interview David Gator in our Indie Roundtable talk, and he's the creative director and co-founder of Summerfall Studios who made the game. And to learn more about their process was just really interesting and very insightful, honestly.
Yeah, and Hi-Fi Rush came in with its crazy custom shading and story-driven audio experience, which actually won an award at the Game Awards as well.
Yeah, we also spoke to some of the Hi-Fi Rush team on an episode of Inside Unreal earlier this year, and apparently a lot of the dark lines that you can see on the textures are actually hand-painted in combination with some really clever shader work. So again, very unique use case of the engine.
Yep, and it looks phenomenal.
Yes, it does, and it sounds amazing too. I mean,
I really have to check that out. Sounds like my cup of tea.
yes,
Exactly.
please do. As for us, our incredible example content team created the absolutely adorable Crop Out Sample, which is a casual stylized top-down RTS project that helps demonstrate the best practices for cross-platform development and release. It helped to tackle some of the lesser represented platforms and genres in the engine, including all the way from low-spec mobile to the most powerful consoles and PCs.
And after all that, we also launched Unreal Editor for Fortnite.
We did?
We did! What an absolute treat it's been for us at Epic to witness all the amazing creations the Fortnite Creator community has shared with us this year. I mean, we're consistently blown away by the talent and innovation of our community. And I feel so blessed, as it's been so inspiring to see all of you take hold of the tools and create something truly epic.
No. No.
It's been especially rewarding watching creators not only become experts within Fortnite Creative like we saw, but also seeing so many of you go out of your comfort zone and dive deep into UEFN, taking your ideas to the next level. Everything from the foliage tool to patchwork to creating your own striking custom assets and developing your unique worlds. It's been an amazing year for our platforms and our community. We've seen everything from 2D nostalgic experiences complete with retro sound to custom gameplay such as timeline switching platformers and even fully customized tycoon games that leave us in awe of your creativity. Andrew, as you work on engineering and development for Fortnite creators, what is it like seeing creators run away with the tools in UEFN?
Yeah, it's been amazing. Like, you know, we released UEFN at GDC in March, and watching creators become more confident making Fortnite content with Unreal Editor and Verse. You know, it's just been fantastic. As you said, there's just been an explosion of diversity of content, which was what we believed would happen if we gave them the power of an Unreal Engine and let them push content into Fortnite, and it's really playing out. Like, you know, we see islands that are coming up like, you know, Fort Who and Fortnite Funland and Murder Mystery. They're great examples of game types in Fortnite that have been unlocked, that creators are unlocking by having access to Unreal Editor. Even games like Only Up Fortnite, that's something you could probably have made in creative mode if you had the patience and skills. But you know, an editor like UEFN it's just so much easier to build it and tweak all that timing. I'm also really happy that, you know, we're seeing those creators actually meaningfully share in Fortnite's success through the engagement payout program that we introduced at UEFN. You know, at Unreal Fest, we were able to announce that we paid out about $120 million to creators, which you know, that's just a real highlight. Right? Epic has always been about empowering creators, and to actually let them kind of share in the success of Fortnite, it's just been a huge win. But you know, I think we're still just scratching the surface. You know, as you expect, it takes time from giving people access to a tool to letting them get comfortable with it, letting them use it. The last few months, we've added a couple of huge features like persistence and patchwork music devices and new camera and control options. So yeah, I'm really excited to see what those lead to, and yeah, and hopefully all through next year we'll keep feeding features and capabilities to the creators and seeing what they make with them.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Andrew. Not only was 2023 huge because of UEFN launch, we had quite a few large updates to the creator ecosystem, including the public roadmap, where you can see all the larger features and tools coming to the platform. Creator Portal launched with updated publishing flow to make it smoother, and the addition of creator pages to showcase your creations. In October, UEFN gained the same save point device, and now creators across both platforms can save players' progress, location, resources, and stats across multiple sessions. There's also been a variety of advanced templates from our wonderful template teams showcasing what's possible, such as Stronghold, Yacht Heist, and Prop Hunt. And you can check all of these out and more on our monthly Creating in Fortnite live stream, by the way. Shameless plug. There will be a little QR code popping up, so check it out and make sure to follow. The launch of Patchwork brought a suite of devices for both Fortnite Creative and UEFN. that allows you to manipulate music and visuals. Not only can you directly control these devices to make immersive background music or jam sessions, you can set them up to sync with gameplay states and even events. And yeah, we're super excited about it, aren't we, Tina? And the moment I saw that, I was like, oh, finally, we're getting it. We've seen it in UE, but it's here.
Yeah. I feel like Patchwork, and I mean, Marcus, feel free to hop in on here too, but I feel like it was a great example of seeing how some of the features of UE can make their way ultimately over into Unreal Editor for Fortnite.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, Patchwork is great. It's built on the MetaSounds technology under the hood, and I think in the process of developing it, they even some of that tech came back to UE as well. So dynamic MetaSounds is now a thing. That's basically what Patchwork is under the hood. Oh man! And I don't know if you go around. Various social media, you can see a lot of really, really cool Patchwork devices out there.
Yeah, we've been loving seeing it. So if you're in there, if you're tooling around, definitely share it with us because we're looking out for them. The team loves to see it. Another notable update that came out was the Village Sample Island in UEFN, which brought with it new camera and control devices, like Andrew mentioned, as well as volume and map controller devices. You can now create your own top-down or side-scroller creation, complete with custom mini-maps and more. And if you haven't checked it out yet, what are you doing?
What are you doing?
What are you doing? Make sure to check it out. Outside of new feature developments, we're also celebrating the success of Alan Wake Flashback, created by Spiral House Studios and Zen Creative, in collaboration, of course, Epic Games and Remedy Entertainment. It is a perfect example of developers leveraging the Fortnite ecosystem to bring further awareness to players about their larger experiences and titles. In this case, not only did this piece drive hype for the newly released Alan Wake 2, the sequel, it was able to, for new players, show what Alan Wake, the first one, was about, so then they could gather that hype and then jump right into Alan Wake 2. So it was a really, really awesome example of that. Congrats to the team on their recent wins and nominations at the Game Awards. We're so proud to see it. We're so excited for them.
Yeah, I mean, they really came in and just kind of swept the board.
Literally.
yeah, they did really good.
They really did. Yeah, it was very cool.
Yeah, but speaking of media and entertainment and all those things, there were some pretty big updates in that world on the UE side too. We had the official release of the MetaHuman animator, for example, which was a huge step for that suite of tools. You can reproduce facial performances as high fidelity animation on any MetaHuman with no fancy hardware required. Every nuance of the actor's performance is captured and transferred onto your digital human, enabling developers to easily create believable characters that deliver immersive experiences. I mean, you're seeing this 3 lateral showcase right now, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's wild, it's insane, it's remarkable. Yeah. Well, heck, you look more real than you, Tina.
That's a silly thing to say, Shay. That's silly.
Is Tina real, or is she MetaHuman? What do you think, chat? What do you think?
Marcus?
I mean, it turns out Tina actually hasn't even been here all day. This is a green screen.
It's all coming together.
We also saw UE used in some high-profile film projects. MPC, who worked on Little Mermaid, utilized Unreal Engine 5 to conceptualize early versions of the virtual sets. This enabled the team to quite literally see in real time the performances of the actors as they interacted with the actual scene. And Barbie was shot on Warner Brothers Studios' Leavesden's 5 stage in the UK, which Lex helped design, build, and operate using Unreal Engine. Voice in the Hollow, as well, is an absolutely stunning animated short that used a combination of 3D and 2D animation art and techniques to tell a haunting story about sisterhood set in an African tribal village. But I won't say any more to avoid spoilers. I do have to say, though, if you haven't seen it already, you definitely should. And as for internal projects, we published a step-by-step guide that explains how to use virtual production workflows for visualization, the process of creating computer-generated imagery to help plan and preview various aspects of a production, which includes
Okay, yeah.
previs,
All right.
pitchviz,
Okay.
techviz,
Yep.
stuntviz,
Yeah.
and postviz.
Gesundheit.
Thank you. We launched this virtual production visualization initiative to get the creative process put directly into our developers' hands. And we partnered up with Savvy Architects and Neoscape for Project Hillside. Hillside is an Unreal Engine architectural sample project that showcases Mosh Safdie's original unbuilt architectural design proposal, as well as existing building Habitat 67. The sample project is perfect for seeing how the engine's state-of-the-art ArcViz techniques can be applied to large-scale visualization projects. It utilizes many of the new UE 5.2 rendering features like Nanite, Lumen, path tracing, virtual shadow maps, and many others, all of which work right out of the box. Plus, Twinmotion got a huge UI update as well as expanded its tools to include some of the most highly requested features such as Lumen, dynamic global illumination, and a reflection system. In fact, version 2023.2 also brought with it early access to an import option which allows you the ability to import files with animation data. There's also the new ability to import Adobe Substance 3D parametric materials, enhanced scene authoring, a new automotive White Studio template, and more. Definitely worth checking out, especially by anyone interested in ArcViz. Yeah. And many games and films are only possible with the help of community-created assets from the Unreal Engine Marketplace. So sending love and appreciation to all of the sellers across the Epic community. And if you're in need of more products for your own projects, keep an eye on Epic socials for a little something special, maybe, at the end of the year. Keep an eye out.
Oh my goodness.
Don't worry about it. But I could go on and on about all of the sensational projects that came out this year because you, our community, have boundless imagination and ability. So, Shane, want to walk us through some of our community updates?
Well, absolutely, Tina. I would love to. Something core to these tools is the community that uses them. I mean, community is everything. There is no point in these tools and updates if there is no one creating with them. And boy, did we get lucky with quite the talented and passionate group of developers. We want to extend a heartfelt thank you to each and every one of you who has shared your insight, feedback, thoughts, and time with us. Your communication and expertise make our role here fun, engaging, and truly fulfilling. We appreciate you so much. So thanks for all the feedback and incredible ideas you've shared with us. Because of that, we've whipped up some awesome community initiatives this year, including live streams with creator guests such as Mac Jack, Mustard Plays, Dolphin Dom, Directing Pete, and more with our monthly Fortnite Creator Fireside Chats. It's an official stream where creators speak to their passions within the industry and give sage advice for other creators. We also kicked off our monthly Creating in Fortnite live stream, and there we bring Epic developers and Fortnite creators together as we deep dive into the latest Fortnite creative and UEFN tools, updates, and best practices. Make sure to check out and subscribe to our Fortnite Create YouTube if you haven't yet. There's tons of awesome content to learn about the latest tools and stay up to date in the Fortnite Creator universe. If there wasn't the QR code for that, make sure and pop that. It's yep.
It'll be there. Trust us.
Yeah.
But if you're a fan of Inside Unreal, you'll really love that show, genuinely. Plus, I will be crashing the party next week. Yes, I will, for the Creating in Fortnite on the 20th.
What?
So, yes.
I had no.
You planned it. What do you mean?
We're even going to have special developer guests appearing who have worked in both Unreal Engine and UEFN and have found success. So we figured up in the ante by combining our powers would truly make the last live stream of the year magical. Magic, truly. And to all of you who develop and create across our platforms, keep those amazing creations coming. And all that glorious feedback, it's gold. We appreciate you. If you haven't yet, dive into the Epic developer community at dev.epicgames.com. It's your go-to hub for all things feedback, tutorials, forums, documentation, and more. Not just for UEFN and Creative, but all of our platforms, right, Tina?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, speaking of the Epic developer community, we celebrated our first year with the expanded EDC. It's grown into a place to learn, interact, engage, discuss, and stay in touch with both our products and, more importantly, like-minded devs. We've welcomed Fortnite creators, the Epic Game Store, MetaHuman, and Capturing Reality in with our other projects, all in one easy-to-access location. And perhaps what I'm personally most excited about, have begun to integrate documentation into the site directly.
Yeah, Short mentioned that earlier. He's also very excited.
Yeah, because it's great having all of this in one easy to access location. It's constantly being updated and improved upon by our wonderful documentation team. So it's not only a one-stop for all of your needs related to Epic projects, but you've got access to our ever-growing community through both our forums and tutorials. But Shord, you are the one with the plan here. Could you share your vision for the Epic developer community, and why are we doing this?
Yeah, there's a few different things to it, right? I think, first of all, we're all in it together. You know, if you look, we all want to make really cool, awesome stuff. That's what unites all of us. And there is really a lot to learn about Unreal Engine. You know, Unreal Engine is really wide, really deep. You can do anything you want with it, right? So there's a lot to learn and a lot to dive into. And collectively, we all have a lot of knowledge. So for us all to make even cooler stuff, all of us individually or in teams, we got to make sure that everyone can share and help everyone else. So that's one really core element to it. Then the second one, I think, is that the strategy generally is that by bringing everything together, we can make sure that the user experience becomes more consistent, but more importantly, we can make sure that it will help increase exposure. And that's important because if everything is in one place, you're more likely to find or discover or search or whatever, something else that's interesting or useful to you. And the more that happens, the more likely it is that more people start contributing back. And the more that people contribute back, the more useful information is there, the more it kind of gives a flywheel effect. And if you want to have a healthy and supportive community, which is absolutely what we're going for, that's kind of the key flywheel effect that you need to hit. And that was kind of the idea with bringing it all together in one place and really unifying it, centralizing it, and doubling down, fully supporting that one place. And I think there's also a really personal reason to it, probably. I started when I was a teenager. My life was completely different. My life now is utterly transformed because of Unreal Engine with all those years. I want to make sure that other people can experience that too. I want to make sure that happens over and over again across the world for, anyone else who's basically, getting into this space or already is in this industry or, in space, and just supporting that and giving back, basically.
For sure. I mean, you've been around for a huge part of the engine and community's journey. So what has it been like for you to watch so much of these efforts just culminating in this past year?
It's been really, really nice. Again, there's a very personal notes, right? But if I look back at all the things that I've done, and I've built games, and you've done, I did teaching and mods and like all that stuff you do over the years. But then you think back of what has had the biggest impact on people. What do people still email me about? What have so many people emailed me about before? It's really like things like tutorials or answers or like the help you've given them to get somewhere. And above everything else, above the games you made, texture packs that I made, mods I made, none of it really had the same impact. And so I think the Epic developer community is a way of going further down that path. And to be able to design, like what would be, a next step in the community experience, design that and then see the light of day has been really, really cool. And then to see it grow, right, and it goes well, it's just really cool. And so, if you look back at since launch, we now have about 3,000 tutorials and courses online. The great majority of them made by the community. Epic also has stuff there, but mostly made by the community at large. There's been 340,000 forum posts, 18,000 accepted solutions. There's been and generally there's over 200 million page views a year for the whole thing. So it's really, it's going well. It's really cool to see that this, what's been happening for all these decades, it's still happening and it's stronger than ever. It's really cool to see. And we're not done. I think there's a lot of ideas for where we can go. We're often kind of joking, oh, we can do this and this and this and this too. But I think where this is going, maybe we do. So let's see how far we go. Documentation is indeed next. So Unreal Engine 5 documentation is going to be moved over into the Epic developer community soonish.
Yes, which is going to be very exciting. Like I said, that's probably one of the things that I'm most excited about personally. So really excited to see that go through. We also hosted a slew of challenges, as well as our 9th Epic Mega Jam, which featured finalists for both UE devs and UEFN creators alike. These challenges were to help focus on specific areas of development and give a friendly nudge into trying something new. And not only did that happen, but you all created some truly insane, thoughtful, and beautiful projects. And of course, the Mega Jam was crazy and exciting, as it always is. But it was a lot of fun watching these two communities come together and try their hand at shared themes and concepts. And it was also thrilling to see lots of folks trying out UEFN for the first time thanks to the jam.
Yes, and we were so proud to see all the UFN creators who came together to test their talents and compete for the top spot in this year's Mega Jam. Playing through the entries, it was exciting to see creators go for the gold and build super unique experiences within the span of only a week. Congrats to Time Heist by Click Creative for taking the crown this year in UEFN. Additional congrats to Best Builds and Rules of Three for landing in the top 3 as well. Y'all crushed it.
Absolutely. And speaking of having everyone come together, there was no better physical example of this than this year's Unreal Fest. It was the first time creators and developers came together for their very own event. And this year in particular was crazy. There were so many good talks, which most are available on our YouTube channel, so check them out sometime. And we even had Snoop Dogg and Cordell share the stage and speak about their new studio, what the industry and its future means to them, and, well, really to all of us. And over the span of 3 days, we saw knowledge gained and shared, and just as importantly, connections and friendships made. So getting to share the space between both our devs and creators was incredibly special. And there is so much that each of these communities were and still are able to share with each other. I mean, combining perspectives and experiences is what it's all about. And I know all of us are excitedly awaiting to see what collaborations like this can bring in the future.
Absolutely. I want to say I'm especially proud of the Fortnite Creative and UEFN community who came to Unreal Fest. Some did talks for the very first time in their career ever, and it was really wonderful to see the community come together and support each other also, and then be able to mingle with people across the industry. So that was so cool.
Yes.
And we can't possibly speak about big accomplishments for the year without also acknowledging the love and effort that went into 3 of our major releases: LEGO Fortnite, Rocket Racing, and Fortnite Festival. Starting with LEGO Fortnite, the ultimate survival crafting adventure, but even better because LEGO bricks elements and styles. It introduces vast open worlds where the absolute magic of Fortnite and LEGO building collide. LEGO Fortnite is the first game experience from the long-term partnership between Epic and the LEGO Group, and the journey is just beginning. Stay in the know by following them at LEGO Fortnite. Launched very shortly after that, and by shortly I mean the very next day,
Right.
Rocket Racing. It's a supersonic arcade racer where players fly, boost, and above all drift with friends through an ever-growing selection of racing tracks. Rocket Racing is developed by the Psyonix team, the brilliant minds behind Rocket League. To keep up with everything Rocket Racing, make sure to follow them at Rocket Racing on social. And last, but absolutely not least, is my personal favorite because I'm a rhythm girly, Fortnite Festival. A new music game where players can play in a band with friends or perform solo on stage with hit music by their favorite artists. Sounds familiar, right? Well, it's built by the wonderful Harmonix team, the studio behind the iconic music game Rock Band. The weekend kicked off Fortnite Festival Season 1 as the game's first music icon, and there's certainly more on the horizon, so to keep up to date, check them out at FN Festival on social. Expanding the Fortnite universe into these different creative experiences while also offering even further diversified tools for creators is no small feat, and it points towards a future with grander opportunities for developers to build and players to be immersed in. Andrew, what do creators have to look forward to in the next year?
We've got a lot of great stuff coming next year. We just talked about, we launched Lego Fortnite and Rocket Racing and Fortnite Festival. They're having new carriers of gameplay and hopefully bring more diverse audience to Fortnite. And these are features that we plan to make available to creators over time. We want you to be able to make your own music games, design tracks for Rocket Racing, and let your imagination run wild with access to digital twins of thousands of physical Lego elements. Getting a little bit more tactical, we have the public roadmap, as we mentioned earlier. We've announced a couple of features already, so we're going to make it a lot easier for creators to make custom AI and NPC characters with completely custom models and animations, and then power all that with logic run by Verse. Speaking of Verse, there's a lot coming next year. We're developing a new virtual machine that we think will be about 10x more performant than it is today, and that'll allow creators to write a lot more code that's a lot more complex. We're going to have a new persistence API for Verse that gives creators much greater flexibility beyond save point device on what they can persist between sessions. And that's actually the same tech that we're using today in LEGO Fortnite to have those huge persistence worlds. So we're going to put that in the hands of creators. And we have a new scene graph API for Verse. At a high level, this is going to let creators programmatically inspect, configure, modify all the aspects of their world. It's an API that will continue to expand over time, but it's really exciting to think what creators could do with that amount of fine-grained control. We'll talk more in more detail about at GDC about all these things, but yeah, it's going to be a really exciting year, and I can't wait to see what people do with these things.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. I know I've heard quite a few creators asking for those things, so it's going to be a really exciting year, and there's so much more to come. So thanks for sharing, Andrew. But also, I'm curious, what do these changes mean for the creators and players, and what does the future in total look like?
Yeah, I mean, our long-term vision is that Epic and creators of all sizes, from the Word Andrew individual to the small team, they should be able to make games with the same tools and features that we have access to. And there's a host of reasons why that isn't possible today, but we're closing that gap, and we're committed to continue to do so. Even today at Epic, we actually do use UEFN and Verse ourselves for some development. So if you look at Fortnite Festival, for example, some of that content has been built in UEFN. We're using UEFN to build some tracks for rocket racing, and we're continuing to expand how we use those tools internally, because that makes us look at the tools ourselves and feel those limitations, and it really drives us to solve them and have that unified vision for one tool set. Our grand ambition is the next 2 or 3 years, we get those tools to a position where we can actually go build an entire season of Fortnite in UEFN, and including everything you would expect. So weapons, items, cosmetics, quests, everything you would see in a Fortnite season, we actually want to be able to do that in UEFN and give creators those same tools. For players, we think there's a lot of benefit there as well. Having a Fortnite ecosystem experience that has a variety of different islands, but the content feels cohesive. We think that's really, really compelling and very important to us. And we want players to feel the continuity between islands with respect to things like character and cosmetic choices. For LEGO Fortnite, we were really happy that we found a way to introduce the cosmetic matching between those experiences, and similar with Rocket League and Rocket Racing. And we want to keep figuring out how we do that, particularly for content that's made by creators and not by Epic.
Awesome. Thank you so much for elaborating on that. And Marcus, what big changes for Unreal Engine developers are coming? What is the next iteration of game development?
Yeah, I think kind of as Andrew mentioned, we want to bring the full power of UE over to UEFN. We also simultaneously want to bring some of the cool stuff that's in UEFN back to UE. Not specifically promising these things in 2024, but for example, Verse, that's a place where we're proving it out over there. As Andrew mentioned, we've got an upcoming new VM that's going to drop early next year. Hopefully, a big increase in performance, and that's the time when we're going to start evaluating, okay, is this ready for, engine prime time, and maybe start bringing that stuff back. Also, just things to make development easier for big and small projects. Some of our more eagle-eyed community members might have noticed a thing called Unreal Build Accelerator kind of drop into the GitHub a little bit ago. I think you can look forward to seeing more of that next year to help potentially help compile times for those of you who like to make your own modifications to the engine or have a C++ type program. And then just continue to expand on PCG, Substrate. Those are currently in experimental. We hope to get those production ready. More modeling tool improvements. So you don't have to leave the engine to make your worlds, and you can just kind of stay inside the editor while you make your games. UX improvements overall, more convergence between our online services, being more built directly into the engine. So I think it's a matter of convergence between the two sets of technologies, and just making lives easier for developers on big and small projects.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's really exciting to see it all really come together, and I'm excited to see what happens in the future. But speaking of excitement, for all of you, I am curious about what you are most excited about coming up. And Marcus, I know you just went to do a full answer, but I'm going to pick on you first anyway.
I always have to go first.
Yep.
I mean, for me, I did, we and the whole team have done a whole lot of work to get UE5 out the door. We're on 5.2, 5.3 now, and game development life cycles are long. So what I'm really excited about, I think, this year we're starting to see it, and next year we're going to start seeing that first and second wave of games who started in UE5, and we're able to take full advantage of the technologies that we worked so hard to get out there through their entire development life cycle, and really see what the community can do when they start from that place, as opposed to kind of porting to it in between.
Yeah.
And for me, I'm pretty excited about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. What about you, Andrew? What are you most excited about?
I'm really excited about the increased diversity that we see in Fortnite. So we talked about the games, the new game types that we've added in this month. Those are bringing in more diverse players. We have creators who are going to build more and more diverse experiences using the new tools, and I think that's a very virtuous cycle. And of course, like creators can meaningfully share in that with the engagement payouts. So individually, these are really big achievements, but I think they're going to really combine and create something of a flywheel for the Fortnite ecosystem that benefits players and creators.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, Shord, for you, what are you most excited about?
Well, I mean, close to my heart and to what I'm doing at the moment, but to continue to empower, all developers and creators by further growing and improving our forums, documentation, tutorials, sample projects, stuff like that, right? Like the mentioned getting Unreal Engine documentation over, that's the next step. But there's a lot more possible. There's a lot more on our lists as well of what we want to do. So, keep on going in that area. And I think there's just, picking off 2024, again, sky's the limit, I guess. So 2025 the same. So yeah.
That's right, Short. It was a big year, and there's only more to come next year. A huge thank you to all of our guests for joining us today. Thank you so much.
Yes, and of course, thank you all for watching. We wouldn't be what we are or where we are without you, your creativity, your persistence, and your involvement in our community. So, sincerely, we wish you all a very happy holiday season, and we'll see you next year. All right. Bye, everyone. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.